This is the Stacking Days Podcast, the podcast about the healing experience of recovery for people of color by people of color. This show is for the purpose of education and connection and is not a replacement for therapy or recovery care. We suggest you seek out the support of a trained professional for guidance with your specific circumstance. I'm your host, Ray Donovan, and I've been alcohol-free since September 2021. Welcome to the show. Hey y'all, what's going on? Welcome back to the show, the Stacking Days Podcast. Again, I'm excited about today's episode. We got a powerful brother that's going to be joining us. You know, not only is he a veteran, he's an author, he's a podcaster, he's an academic. I think he's got a lot to share. To the conversation around healing, around recovery, sobriety, addiction. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. So I want to welcome Kenneth to the show. Kenneth, welcome.
How you doing, Ray? How you doing, man? Stacking Days. Thankful to be on here and be able to get a chance to, share my story and be able to help those that look like us. You know what I'm saying? That to me is, what it's all about, is to be able to let us know that we're out here and we're out here recovering out loud with no hesitation.
Love it, man. Love it. Thank you for joining us and spending some time on the show. I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate you giving the Stacking Days Podcast some time. And to your point, just being unapologetic and recovering out loud for folks who are looking to step into that space. So, jumping right into it, I wanted to, number one, give you a space to introduce yourself. What are you up to these days? And then also, in about 5 or 10 minutes or so, just kind of give us a history on Kenneth and his, relationship with alcohol, when it started, when maybe you recognized that you had an issue, and kind of what precipitated, you kind of deciding to move in a different direction and move into a brighter light. So I'll hand the mic over to you and just kind of give us a recap of what's going on with Kenneth.
Okay. Well, like I said, my name is Kenneth Watson. I've been sober now 6 years, 3 months, and 7 days today.
Congrats, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm an author of this wonderful book right here, 12 Faces of Sober. It has been out since August of 2020, so 2.5 years. And also to add to that, I just celebrated 1 year of the book being a bestseller on Amazon. So February 22nd of 2022, I became #1 in the alcohol category for my book. So just that. I host a podcast, 12 Faces of Sober Speaks, as well as I'm working on another book. This one is going to be not so much about alcoholism, but about baseball. So that's in the works. All I got to do is just go up to where I received both my degrees from, and I'll meet with the publisher to put that into production. Cool. That one's about baseball. And I'm a mentor. I actually had my first public speaking gig at my old university. I graduated from St. Cloud State University twice, 2003 and 2018, where I got my master's degree in strategic media communications. And so let's see what else. That's it. And, just happy to be back in Minnesota. I moved back from Jacksonville, Florida, my birth city, actually last July. So it's good to be back around not only friends, but family. My mom lives here, sister, niece, and nephews all live here. And I missed that for the last 3.5 years. So definitely happy to be back.
That's awesome, man. It's always fulfilling to be back with family, especially after spending, to your point, so many years within, this pandemic where we just weren't able to really take advantage of that connection. So I love hearing that, man. Let's rewind it back, man. Talk to me about, where your relationship with alcohol started and kind of what your why was behind the drink, and, and ultimately what led you to moving on into a space of sobriety. Would love to hear your story.
Well, first time I got a taste of alcohol, I probably was about between the ages of 5, maybe 6 years old. Between 4 and 6. My dad, Navy, he on the weekend, worked hard Monday through Friday, on the weekends off. He got with his buddies in the Navy housing in San Diego, and they drank. And so, I'm the youngest. I'm following, what my dad was doing. And of course I was curious, like, hey, how come I can't drink this stuff? And then I would ask him, hey, can I get a sip? And not knowing that those couple of sips would, carry on throughout not only my adolescent years, but my teenage years. And with that, my father would, travel international, the Pacific, Philippines, stuff like that. So he would go to like a lot of different islands, Africa, and would come back with just a variety of alcohol. So of course it was, within reach. So everybody, myself, my brothers and sisters, everybody was hitting the bottles. But for me, it was like, okay, I'm drinking it, but I'm pouring water in it. And the very first time I got drunk, I was 12. A buddy of mine spent the night. My parents went to somebody's house, and I told him, I was like, hey man, I want to take some shots. You want to take them? He was like, nah. So he basically just watched me take shots. I ended up getting very drunk, threw up, Kool-Aid on my carpeted floor that was tan, and that stain was in that house probably for a good 10 years afterwards. But, same thing like in high school, I was an athlete. So, on Fridays after football games, basketball games, you're looking forward to partying, drinking. Don't ask how us teenagers in California or in San Diego was able to get alcohol, but it was always stocked. And so it went from that to college. But, even when I started, going to college up here in Minnesota, it wasn't necessarily a problem. It was just like, okay, we would, it was nothing to do, on the weekends. So, we get together and drink. And, you also, we talked about it. I wanted to mention too about that. I also went to a historically Black college back in '99. I went to Clark Atlanta University for a year.
Okay.
But, I just thought about that because I drank a lot more when I was at Clark than I did when I went to college up here. And, so here it is, I'm the first person in my family to receive a bachelor's degree. I'm the youngest of 5. I work in my field. My dream came true right out of college. I was working in radio. I did that. I worked in radio for 2 years before I graduated, and 2.5 years afterwards. And after I got a big head, I'm now an honored personality. I wanted to go to Phoenix, or my mom moved to Phoenix, and I was like, well, I might as well go with her. And so I went out there in the hopes of like, okay, I can blow up, can be, the next big radio personality out there. It never happened. I applied to almost every station out there, hip hop, R&B, Spanish stations, sports stations, talk radio, anything, any type of radio station I can, try to get into, they wasn't having it. And it was back then, it was like, who how to get yourself in the door. And like I said, I couldn't get in. So I had to go get another, go get a real job. And so as I'm now in this realm of, going to work, I started to like sink into depression because it was like, it took me 6 years to get my bachelor's degree. And it was like, okay, I have this bachelor's degree. I'm now working at Dillard's, a department store. And I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm working at the post office, nothing against the post office, but if I wanted to just go get a job at the post office, I didn't have to go to college. You know what I'm saying? I could have just worked straight out of high school and made that a career like, my brother did. And so like, I was working odd and end jobs, substitute teaching, working at Walmart. And so all of this on top of that, hanging out with my brother, he's 10 years older than me. He's drinking, he's smoking. I'm hearing problems about their miserable, his friends, their miserable marriages. And I'm just taking it all in. And it went from just me drinking an MGD to now drinking, as you were saying before we started talking, malt liquor, 40 ounces. I was doing the same exact thing, and it was like, I guess it was the internal part of like the anger. And so it was like my tolerance went from just a lightweight to now I can down 2 and 3 40 ounces. And that's when it started to become a problem, and also making bad choices in relationships with women that were kind of verbally and physically abusive. And, I was taught not to put my hands on a woman. So it was like, okay, why am I tolerating this? But I'm drinking. So at that time, that my environment that I was around, it was like, this is what women do. They're in your face. It's okay. Y'all get over it. But as it progressed, it was the same thing. And so I got in trouble in 2008. Ended up spending the night in jail for criminal damage, even though the charges was dismissed. And I had nowhere to go. And so that was my first stint in rehab. I came up here, did a rehab stint in Minneapolis. It was by far not my, it was more or less of a forced thing over me saying, okay, I want to go. And so I did the 30 days. That same day I got out, my nephew came to pick me up. And I literally told him, I said, take me to the liquor store. And he was like, but you just got out of rehab. I said, I don't care. You're going to take me to the liquor store type stuff. And so,
because that was mandated by the court, right?
No. It was nothing. Nothing ever happened as far as the. Okay. I ended up leaving Phoenix and coming back up to Minnesota because it was like I was homeless.
Gotcha.
And so like the woman that I was engaged. So the woman I was living with, it was like, okay, I don't have nowhere to go. I didn't want to stay with my brother. And so I came back to Minnesota, and then my family ended up forcing me to go to rehab based off of, the actions that happened to me in Phoenix.
Gotcha.
And so I went to rehab, and they were like, okay, what are you going to do with your life? I said, well, I'm going to join the military when I get out. They're like, we're at war. I said, I don't care. I said, I'm at war with myself. What else can go wrong? So I went ahead and I joined. Now, mind you, there, that time of, basic training, going to school, you're not drinking. But as soon as I got to my first duty station, that first weekend, I was already, so I knew what it was, and like I said, I grew up in a military home. So I was already familiar with the drinking culture. And so that's pretty much what it was. I got into incidents after incidents in the Army, alcohol related, had to go to alcohol substance. I think it's the alcohol substance program, went to rehab. At this point, I got married. I had to go to rehab because I was physically assaulted by my ex-wife, mandated. And that was mandated. If I didn't go, I could have went to jail or military jail or whatever. And so basically I was in that marriage, same thing. It was abusive. I tolerated it. And then they were getting ready to kick me out because of the fact that she got arrested for domestic violence. And then I had to go to rehab because it was alcohol related. And so when they did that, I went ahead and was like, you know what, I'm going to take a medical. I said, my Achilles is messed up, so I might as well just get out. So to push it kind of almost up to where we at now, I had, when I got out in 2015, I literally was on a extended alcohol binge. When I say I probably drank anywhere between 400 days straight, like literally from August of 2015 all the way up August 6th of 2015 until September the 2nd of 2016, give or take. So that was roughly about 400 days where I drank almost every single day, except I take that minus 9 days because I was in the hospital. My pancreas gave out. And, but even though that happened, I still didn't like stop drinking. I still drank because I was still in that I'm a civilian again type stuff. And it was more or less where I didn't know how to deal with reality. And so by this point, I was in a homeless shelter. And when I went to the homeless shelter, I was sober for 47 days until they kicked me out they said I stole a towel, which wasn't true. But then I called my mom. I said, look, I have to leave. But she's like, you have to go to rehab. And so to answer your question, what was that defining moment is when my mom told me that she did not want to bury her son. And this from a night of going to the casino because I like to, I don't play as much, but I used to like play poker really heavy. And so after coming home at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, waking up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my mom was like, I'm still intoxicated. She's like, what can I do to help you? And when she said, I don't want to bury my son, that's when I woke up and was like, you know what? I need to make some changes. Yeah. And so I went ahead and, I still drank for the next couple of weeks, all the way up until when I got into treatment. And I went to treatment November 15th of 2016. And ever since then, I have not looked back for alcohol. And I want to point this out too. When I was in treatment, I had, like I said, I was married at the time. And I like to mention this because brothers, it is possible to get all your possessions. I was able to clean out my ex-wife's house. It was our house, but I paid for, pretty much like 99% of everything that was in it. And so I took everything out of there. And only thing I left her with was a Christmas tree and some linen, like literally, and whatever her kids had, like in the bedrooms. But other than that, I took everything. So I had my furniture. I was able to pay for my furniture to get delivered up here to Minnesota, and my car. So that was a little over $5,000, if not more, to have all that stuff shipped. But while I was in treatment as well, I found out I had diabetes. And then as well, I applied for grad school on a Tuesday and then got accepted that same Thursday. And so once this started to roll, that's when I was like, okay, maybe this time getting sober is it. And so I kind of, when I got out of treatment that same day, I had the keys to my apartment. My mom and my nephew picked me up in my car. So we literally went from whatever belongings I had there to take that to my apartment. And that was December 14th of 2016. And then 3 weeks later, I was in grad school working on my master's. And that was it. And then a couple months later, I was studying abroad at Nelson Mandela University. And so it was like, at that point, I knew, like, after having that trip, I knew, like, you know what, I'm on the right pace. And then that was kind of like the birth of 12 Faces of Sober. And it was just from there, I'm helping out. I'm doing community work up in St. Cloud, working with the mayor, working with the police chief, doing community related stuff. I DJ'd for the mayor, DJ'd at other events up there because I've at heart a DJ. I don't do it as much anymore, but that and then, like I said, the book came right after I started writing. I think it was in June of 2019. But I was kind of like, doing the clusters and everything as far as what I wanted to talk about. And then it came from there. And like I said, it was published in 2020. And, the one thing I will say is with, my sober journey is that, like, each year something better has happened. Like, I started grad school 2017, South Africa 2018. I graduated, got my master's. 2019, I started writing a book. 2020, book was published. 2021, podcast was launched. 2022, I started writing a children's book. 2023, I'm now doing, I have my first speaking gig starting next month at St. Cloud State to the recovery community and veterans.
I love that.
So when I say that the sober journey is real because if you really want it, you got to work for it. And like I said, I know for sure, I'm living proof, and I'm only just 6 years in the game. So I know that it's going to continue to get better. And like this, it gives me an opportunity to meet people like yourself that has a platform to where we can create our own space and be able to share it.
I love that, man. I mean, that's a great story, man. I mean, obviously something, a lot to be proud of, right, for you in that, when I hear these stories, it's almost unbelievable, right? When you talk to folks who have pursued, sobriety and just really pursued doing very challenging things and overcoming these things. Oftentimes you hear people talking about, beginning with the end in mind, and you're doing so many amazing things today. But I would imagine that, you probably couldn't have imagined any of this, 7 or 8 years ago, that you'd be involved and be knocking down all of these hurdles, towards, greater and greater success in your life. And I think that that's just, absolutely fantastic. I mean, think about, those 400 days, where you were, drinking consistently. I would be surprised if you would tell me that you were saying at that point in time that I'm going to be an author, I'm going to, have pursued and accomplished my master's degree. I will have, studied in South Africa. I will have, been doing all these things. So I just think that I think what's really important also to highlight is that there is so much positivity for folks to get their hands on the other side of this struggle if they can take those steps to get there. And obviously your story is a testament to that, man. So hats off to you for that.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate it. I definitely, I will say this. I didn't mention it, but therapy does work. I know that in our communities, I know growing up, certain things wasn't talked about. And I know that I had problems growing up, but I just never had those someone in the family saying, hey, you might want to go talk to somebody. You might be angry, or you're, separating yourself from your friends and your family. What's going on? So
Right.
I definitely say that therapy has helped me along, in this journey to be able to not only hash out my past problems, but even to kind of deal with what life is today. Because, we still have problems. There's still issues. It's called life. And so you still need help to be guiding through on this journey, because not every day is going to be a good day.
No, totally. Let me ask you about that, because I mean, therapy is also part of, of my story and my journey as well. And what I recognized in looking to pursue therapy is well, first of all, you have to be vulnerable for therapy to work for you, right? And what I found is it's very challenging for people of color, specifically Black men, to be comfortable, being vulnerable. And it's even more difficult to do that when you can't find a therapist, again, that can sympathize with where you're coming from culturally. So for me, I'm in Colorado. And I was in Colorado when I pursued, recovery and sobriety. It was just hard for me to find, a therapist of color that I just baseline felt comfortable talking to. So there was a couple bouts, a couple therapists that I went through before I got to somebody who, number one, I respected and felt, and felt at least that there was a space that was created where I can, get into that work. What did that look like for you? Being, a veteran, I don't know if you took advantage of the resources, that were made available to you, but what did that process of in identifying someone that ultimately fit for you look like?
Oh, that's a good question, because I'm struggling with that right now. But when I first got sober, I had a therapist through the VA. I'm 100% disabled, so all my medical goes through the VA. I had a therapist up in St. Cloud, which is like an hour away. She was great, and I had decided to. I think I had her for all of grad school, so you might say at least like 2 years. And so when I went to Jacksonville, I had one therapist, and she was, I hope she was of color. I don't know, but she was cool. But the thing is that she ended up leaving she left the department or something. So she no longer was being a therapist. So I went about a year without a therapist, which was hard, So, but I ended up getting another one, and I was really sad that I had to leave because she was Black. And it was in a lot of ways, it felt like I was just talking to my sister. It was like I
Right.
was talking to my mom. And it was like, dang, I finally got somebody that just tells it like it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes she's like, I can't say this. But she's like, I'm going to tell you anyway. Like stuff where it was like, damn, I'm like, okay, who's talking to me? My mom and my sister
Yeah.
or my therapist type, because that's just how I've respected her, because it was like she did not like to see me going through some of the stuff that I was going through, because it was tough. I didn't have family when I was living in Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
It was just the person I was with, and then myself. I knew some people in the surrounding areas, but it wasn't like I had it. And then so when I got here, same thing. I was going through a very, tough time in my life last summer, and I went through the whole process to get another therapist. The guy seemed cool. We had the appointment scheduled, and then somebody called me and was like, "Oh, he no longer works here." And I'm like, "That's weird." Okay. So then I had another therapist. I think I saw her 2 or 3 times, and it was just, I didn't click with her. It didn't seem like she understood, she has experienced anything that I'm discussing with her.
Right.
And so it was difficult. And then I was sick right around Thanksgiving time, and I had to reschedule the appointment. And then I canceled it or whatever. You can just text cancel the appointment. And then normally if you cancel an appointment that same day, they're supposed to call you to reschedule. I haven't heard from them since. And then I had hurt my back a couple weeks ago, and I had told my primary doctor, I said, "Hey, I need a therapist." I said, but they don't, at this VA here in Minneapolis, they don't even have a Black therapist on staff. So what they have to do is they have to assign you out to the community and get it. But they haven't done so. And then it was kind of ironic, especially that you asked the question, because my therapist actually, not my therapist, but my primary doctor's nurse called me today, and I was like, "Hey, I need to see a therapist immediately." I said, "Please." She's like, "I'm gonna send a note over to them." And so hopefully they'll get back with me probably tomorrow, if not before the, well, probably not, because that blizzard is actually now. So I don't know if if the VA is going to actually even be open tomorrow, but hopefully they'll call me within the next couple of days, because I definitely need to get back in it.
Man, and sounds like just a potentially a pretty complicated system to work through. So the resources are there, but it seems like there's a lot of onus on you to try to identify where they are and get what you need. So, hopefully, you do get that therapist locked in. I mean, I know how important, that can be for somebody. So, fingers crossed for you, man. I was going to ask you, before we get into some other questions, and, you talked a little bit about your mom and, kind of her words of sounds like desperation to basically say like, yo, Kenneth, you need to get your stuff together here because I can see where this is going. I'm just curious, sounds like it wasn't her first experience in recognizing someone being in a position of pain. Is it, so when you think about like, I was recently having a conversation with another guest, Priscilla, which I think Priscilla too. And we were talking about generational trauma and, how some of these narratives are passed on, through the generations, with being that, your family was, open to the culture of alcohol, with your dad and that exposes to the rest of your siblings. What's been your mom's experience in all of this, kind of leading up and seeing how this progression has, played in your life? And then, I mean, obviously I'm sure she's ecstatic today, but there were probably a lot of signs that she was looking at to say, like, I've seen this before. I would love to just talk a little bit about, was there that aspect of, the generational pass down as far as the struggle is concerned?
Yeah, I definitely would say that, especially on both sides, because, she's told me stories of how, when she was growing up, she witnessed her grandfather or her uncles getting into it, they pulling weapons on each other, like really trying to do bodily harm to them. And, my dad, like I said, he had his own issues with drinking. So she witnessed it. But I think it was like she saw the problems that, whatever was going on between her and my father. But now it's like, it just seemed like whatever I was going through was just magnified times whatever compared to what she was seeing. And so I guess it was, and I didn't really like go into detail, but I'll just share this real quick. Is I think that she saw that there was a lot of similarities in terms of like those bad relationships, that I was having with women. And that kind of was something I think that she probably dealt with within the marriage of being married to my dad, because they're no longer, they haven't been almost this. But yeah, she, even now, like she knows that I don't have any type of desire to drink, but I know that she's like very surprised, at the fact that so many things have changed. It's like you said, it's like night and day. Like I wasn't thinking about this 7-8 years ago. Like I would, you know what I'm saying? Being on a podcast, sharing like a positive story, not some like story like I'm behind bars. Like I made mistakes from drinking alcohol. So, and she likes it too. I think the most important is like the fact that I wrote that book. She won't read the chapter about my marriage, but the fact, because my mom loves to read. And so that's where I got my reading. I used to read books as a kid, but my sisters ruined that because I was pretty intelligent and they started making fun of me. So it was like, you don't need the books. So, but I actually was able to get her my own personal book. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I know that she's happy though, for sure.
That's awesome, man. She's got to be extremely proud of you. I want to fast forward now kind of into, back into your sobriety and talk a little bit about those early days, right? I mean, granted, you enrolled yourself in a graduate program, and you had all kind of these big, lofty, goals in front of you. What were some of the smaller things that you implemented in your life just to kind of keep you protected in that space of sobriety as you were kind of taking it day by day?
My health. And so I switched like my diet. Like I stopped pork, and I toyed around with, being a vegan and vegetarian. I was just trying any and everything because, like I said, I started when right as I got sober, I think I was like maybe 220. And I was just like, what can I do? I'm doing all the research. Oh, you should eat this, eat that, drink less. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not drinking alcohol. So I think that was most important, was just getting my health in order within the first few months of being sober. Like I said, I was not really in a divorce battle, but it was just the fact that I had to pay for everything in terms of I had to pay for my attorney, put it that way. But
Mm-hmm.
that was the focus, and making sure I can put a close to that chapter. And yeah, just more or less, I think that what helped helped my mindset was taking my mind off of whatever problems and issues I had when I was living in Arizona, when I was in the Army. So to be able to, because I didn't care about my health when I was drinking, as I mentioned, I was in the hospital for it. I tried to do grad school when I was in the Army in 2014 at the University of Texas, El Paso, but couldn't do it because I was drinking. So now I'm not drinking and I'm just in school. And
Mm-hmm.
so I involved myself on campus. I was just the OG at 37, still rocking retro Jordans and dressing, not with the tight jeans, but still dressing the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like, cool. And I just started mentoring these, you know what I'm saying? Because when I was there in my undergrad, there were a few people that was in the graduate program that did that, of color.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, all right, I'm mentoring just a big group. I used to have people come over to my apartment. I barbecue for them, send them on their way. You know what I'm saying? Like just to show them, like, hey, you guys ain't got to be out here in these streets, clubbing, drinking, whatever. You come through, get some good food, get some good laughs, enjoy yourself, and go home. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I, just remove myself of all the negative people, the negative places, and just put myself in something totally different. So I would say that just a change of environment is
awesome.
what helped too.
I've been always curious about this. Where I mean, and maybe this is a little self-explanatory, but I'm curious. Where did 12 Faces of Sober come from with that kind of that name?
12 years. 12 years. I was 12 years old the first time I got drunk. I battled alcoholism for 12 years, and the faces came from when I was in rehab this last time. And each day they would have or at least in one of the groups, I think we had the group, Monday through Friday, and they would have how do you, what face do you have today? Sad face, happy face, angry face, depressed face, moody face, and then you would have to tell them why. And so that's where it came from. So it just kind of rolled together. It was like, okay, 12, when did I start drinking? 12, and then 12 years. And so it just kind of came together, and then I just threw the Faces of Sober with it.
Cool. I was, I when I first saw it, I was like, I recognize that everybody's journey is different, and I didn't want to see too far into it and think that, was Kenneth, is 12 steps have something to do with this, or anything like that. But I'm glad that you kind of clarified it, because I was curious. I was like, where did this name come from? So thanks you for clearing that up for me.
Yeah, but a lot of people ask that, and I have to, and I'm glad you asked that too, because a lot of people do think that that's what it has to do. I mean, I've been to AA before I got sober. I've been to AA since, and I'm not knocking the program or anything, and not trying to steal it, bring the attention because of the 12. It has nothing to do with that. It was just, like I said, I was like, what would be something that would truly define me? Mm-hmm. And that was the age I got drunk, and the time frame of me drinking, or
gotcha.
Heavily, I would say.
No, it makes total sense now that you've explained it for me. So you fast forward in your sobriety, to 2022, 2023. What are some of the things that you apply today in your life to stay on your track of healing? You're a little. I mean, I'm a year and a half, approaching 2 years. So I'm still a newbie in this whole thing. Where you now have had multiple anniversaries of healing and of recovery and sobriety. What are some of the things that are kind of your go-tos, maybe even on a daily basis? I don't know how regimented you are. I'm assuming there's a degree of regimentation to you, considering you're a veteran, but I'm just curious, what are some of the tools that, are your go-tos today? And could you share those with the audience?
The tools to just maintain day-to-day living, or
maintain day-to-day living, but also continue to step into your own healing. You know what I mean? continue to progress towards being the best version of Kenneth that you now know is possible. Is kind of what I'm more, kind of like that higher level Kenneth. Yeah. And if there are kind of some, day-to-day tactics that keep you straight, then yes, share those too. But I kind of wanted to approach it from, the standpoint of, after having peeled back some of the layers of that onion, what are kind of the big tactics, capital T, that you implement in your life to aspire to your best self?
When the weather is good, to get outside. I can't stress that enough. Where I live now, there's a lake, and so, like I said, last summer I was out there, on a regular, just to get that. I put on some headphones, put on some West Coast music, and it can be a mindset of a good day or a bad day. But I'm constantly planning. I'm constantly planning on what I can do to better myself. I mean, because I'm not there yet. I'm getting started, but I'm not there. I would say, man, like not to like bring in like religion, but I look at it from a standpoint like I know what the low point is. Like I know what failure looks like, but I'm still working on trying to see what success is. And so all of my life, being sober is something that I've never experienced. This is the longest period of time that I've been sober in my entire life. And I'm not just saying it figuratively. So I take for, I'm appreciative to be alive each day, because when I was drinking, it was like me just saying that my life was over. I was taking those risks. So now I don't take those risks. So I'm very careful. I use a rap cliche, every move is a calculated step, because I know, like, I don't work. So, all right, I plan my days. So, like, I get gratitude talking to people like yourself. I get the gratitude, like I reached out earlier today, a brother that's in the Army that's still struggling with alcoholism. And he'll call me like he did like 5 months ago, about 5 months ago with the problem. And every time whenever I think about him, I reach out to him. And I say, I know you're not going to respond, but I want you to know that I got nothing but love for you. That's what I told him today. Those are the type of things. I mean, I'm not mentioning his name, so I can talk about that, but just more or less of knowing that I can help people in the same way, even within the sober community, I can do the same. I have bad days. I'm like, look, I'm struggling, man. Just talk to me. And I've had issues where I've talked to people at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and just allow me to vent. So to be able to do it back and forth is the most important thing. And I don't know if I talked about it, but I've been helping the homeless.
No, you didn't talk about it. Let's hear a little bit about that.
It was by accident. Like, no joke. August 2nd is my birthday. For the last 3 or 4 years, I always am near some kind of water. So obviously last year I was on, well, not last year, but the year before I was on Jacksonville Beach in Florida. But this time I was on the Mississippi River. And so I walked out to this little landing and saw these two little mini buses or whatever. And they're looking at me, I'm looking at them, I'm recording content. And the lady was like, she's like, oh, your shirt, I had on a shirt that said Spiritual Warrior. And she was like, what does that mean? I said, oh, somebody, I said, today's my birthday. Somebody gave it to me as a gift. And they're like, wow. And so they were just drawn to me. And so I said, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we help the homeless. And I was like, believe it or not, I was on the verge of being homeless last July. And until I drove back up here to Minnesota, had to stay with my mom for a couple of weeks until I got this apartment. And so there, I told her, and I was like, yeah, I'm an author. I've been sober for this long. At that time, it was 5 years and 8 months, something like that. They're like, oh my God, wow, you got a good story. And I was like, well, is there any way that, I can come back out here and help you guys? And they're like, yeah, we meet here every Tuesday, blah, blah, blah. So I've been doing it basically since my birthday up until now. And so I've helped veterans. I've, prayed with them because they've asked for it. I've given a lot of good advice to people. I've donated, 12 Faces of Sober, brand new T-shirts that I had over 50, just because I could have made money off of it, but I was like, nah, I'd rather give it to somebody else that will actually wear it and you know what I'm saying, really appreciate having just an article of clothing on that's clean.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and it's been a good experience. Obviously, yesterday the weather was bad, but it's usually every Tuesday I go. I love it. I've met a lot of good people. I've been able to, you know, mentor people. Like one brother, he was like, yeah, man, I had a hard life and this and this and that. And he actually was in the prison. I used to work in a prison out here, the maximum prison, where Chauvin is actually housed at, back in '04. But he was like, yeah, man, you don't want to write a book. I'm like, man, here's my number. Talk to me, man. Just reach out. I said, I want no profits from you, but all I want to do is be able for you to get, whatever story, regardless of whatever mistakes you made, be able to put it on paper in hopes that it inspires somebody else, so they don't have to go down that same road that you've had to experience. So yeah, I just feel like it's my time to give back.
Service is huge, man. And you seem like you've been leaning into it hard, and I think that what, the true service is a service that you're not looking for any recognition on the other end, right? And it sounds like you're doing some great things. What's the name of the organization? That it's for folks who maybe even listening in who are in Minnesota.
Walk with a Purpose.
Okay.
Walk with a Purpose. It's a nonprofit. I don't know like the logistics of it in terms of like who runs it. Well, I know who runs it, but I know that it's like some other like churches that helps them too and stuff. So, but yeah, it's a really good group of people, and they've been very welcoming. Like I was surprised. I'm like, man, I was going through my own personal problems when I first came back last summer, and to be around the group as well as being out there helping people, it's been the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I want to ask you a quick question around you mentioned a few times about some of the the challenging days that you've had over the course of the last 6 years, specifically last year. And without necessarily getting into the details of what that is, I feel like folks oftentimes think that once you transition into this life of sobriety and abstinence, or whatever however you want to categorize it, that all of a sudden everything is gravy, right? And there aren't any issues. Clearly, we're all human beings, and we're going to have good days and we're going to have bad days. In my experience, when I used to have bad days, I would numb that out, by drinking. And so when you remove that coping mechanism, you have to find other things to kind of get you through those harder times, and share what you're comfortable with. But what are the things that you turn to now to kind of get through those more challenging, days and times that you've experienced?
Since I've been back, like I said, when the weather is good, I was going to my mom's house and doing the yard, cutting her grass. Like she has a rider mower. So just to be out there on the back of that, my mom's out there. She has not now because it's covered in snow, but she have a garden, dogs be in the backyard. So it's just, stuff that I would call and she'd be like, yeah, I'm out here doing yard work. But for me to be out there helping her and not even like really worrying about any of my life problems, is just the fact of like just helping her, because she's up in age, and so it's like I'm just still proud that she can get out there and do the yard work by herself sometimes. So I would say that. I would say, like I mentioned, going for walks, recording content, just taking my mind off of whatever that problem is, you know what I'm saying, and putting it into what I love, which is me, and and back into the brand. If it's, like I said, recording content, reaching out to people, trying to get on somebody else's podcast, writing books. Like I said, I don't sit down and write them. I just break out my cell phone and put it on a notepad and just start texting. So like I said, I got probably about another book besides my children's book. And no matter of fact, I do my Army book. So I've been working on that. Okay. So I would be more energized if I was in a warmer climate right now. Like I said, this time last year I was in Florida. So I literally was on the beach and literally was writing a book, and that's it. So that was good up until I got to the point where I started talking about stuff from like that was kind of bad in the Army. Then I had to like just put it to the side, and I haven't brought it back out since. Yeah. But I would just say working on me. And I know that problems are going to still be here, but it's just a different mindset. I'm not angry. I'm not aggressive. I'm not trying to be all confrontational. I'm just a real laid back person. I don't really talk. I don't even like to get upset like that.
Getting upset is exhausting, right? I mean,
No, I'm gonna say shit that somebody, excuse my language, if somebody pissed me off, I just cut them off. Like I ain't got time. Like if you're not trying to grow with me, you can grow somewhere else. Because right now I don't need that in my life right now. So just that and surrounding myself around good people. Like I
yeah,
said, when I was in Florida, I didn't have that. I can go hang out with my nephew. I got a buddy of mine used to work in radio. He's like 25 minutes away. Other guys that I've met, working in radio and just other, just college people still live up here. So, a buddy of mine, he used to work for ESPN. He stays about 20 minutes away. College, went to college together. I had the radio dream. He had the TV dream. We both fulfilled it. And so now he's back. And so it's like we get together. Matter of fact, we getting together in a couple of weeks. And so that's kind of what it is. Just surrounding myself with people, even if they still drink, they respect the fact that I don't.
hmm
And they won't even drink around. Be like, yeah, we'll just wait. we'll wait. We'll drink a little later. So it's just a matter of just being, being. Sometimes you got to be selfish and just work on you and not really let those things happen. Yeah, I mean, I felt victim to it last summer, but it was like I knew that okay, I've been through worse storms, and so it
sure.
was like I knew that the storm was going to be temporary.
That's a great perspective to have. And I also, when you talk about that, it's, what comes to mind is, trying to move yourself into spaces that fulfill you and, being around people that fulfill you and conversations that fulfill you versus, being in a space that is kind of depleting you. Right. And I think that you're much better able to identify what those two paths look like when you're coming from a place of clarity. So, I think that it just positions you better to, to kind of work through a lot of the challenges that are going to exist anyways, right? And you're just better off, coming from a position of health and healing. I'm going to start to wrap this up, and I have two last questions that I want to throw your way. One is a little bit of a hardball. The other one is a little bit more of a kind of a soft lob. Well, I'll say a fastball, considering you're a baseball seems like aficionado.
Oh nah, I wish I would have kept playing. Now that would have been the case. Yeah, don't lie about that.
Is there any old footage of you playing?
No,
No.
man, we didn't have camcorders. Like, man, I was playing baseball and shoot. I think the last year I played might have been like 94. I
Okay.
think last I was like 14.
Okay.
I don't recall seeing any parents in the stand with no camcorders back then.
Man, well, maybe someone will crop up one day and surprise the hell out of you. But
That would be pretty dope though. If I see if they had that. That would be nice.
Two questions. First question is, you think back to some of your darkest days, and you can pick which ones they are. How would have someone around you have known that you were not okay and that you were struggling?
If I was in tears,
Hmm.
if I was just drinking, having a good time, then they would never know like how I was truly like internalizing my problems at that moment. But if tears roll behind it, then yeah, there's something that's really there at that time. There was something that affected me.
I appreciate that honesty. I feel like in our communities, oftentimes we're so reserved and protective of our feelings, our emotions, our struggles, and it's been a curious expedition for me to find out what are some of those nonverbal signs that can indicate to the people that care about us that we're having a challenging time. So I appreciate that vulnerability. Second question I have is, for someone who's sitting there and listening to this or listening to your podcast, and they're sitting there on the fence and they're saying, I feel like I got an issue. I'm struggling here, but I don't necessarily know what my first step would be to move into a new direction. What would you suggest to that person who is trying to take that first step?
I guess it would depend. Like if like I know you mentioned something about the pandemic, but like if the person isn't necessarily like comfortable with, volunteering themselves to go get treatment or something like that. I would, definitely say, like social media can really save your life. Get yourself around the right people. So I would say, follow pages on whatever social media platform you like to use, and just see how what content is being put out. See what you can take from what they're saying. If it's you might hear something similar. I know you touched on sometimes if the story doesn't sound like you're just going to swipe past it. But then there's, if you're hearing, somebody that's talking about some of the same things, growing up this way, experiencing this type of trauma and things like that, then, it might be more relatable. And for me, it was, all right, I followed for a little while, but this is when I got sober, but early stages. But then I also started to reach out to people, just asking questions. Hello, how you doing? My name is, I'm new. Do you have any advice? Do you have any tips? Things like that. I mean, there's coaching, there's free coaching, and obviously there's coaching that costs money. I feel like go the free option. Unless you have the money and the resources to spend it, then go right ahead. But you might get as much from a free one than you would from one that costs money. It's, I would say you'll never know until you try.
Yeah.
Even if because I don't know about you, but I failed at getting sober numerous times. So you have to, when you're ready, take it serious. The same way, like you got to get up and go to a job, just take it serious. If you really want this, if it's for you, your health, your mental health, everything, or if it's court mandated or whatever it is, and just watch how your life unfolds. Surround yourself with those positive people. But if those same people that you're hanging out with that you were doing when you was using, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be successful. You have to kind of, just start over, a clean slate, unless you tell your friends, hey, I'm not going to be doing this no more. Can you respect that? I didn't have to have those conversations with my friends, but they understood I'm not going to drink around him. I know how much he used to drink, so I'm not going to do it. And, and you have to basically retrain your mind, love yourself again, because you loved yourself when you was intoxicated, or at least you thought. But now this is a newfound love. It's like meeting a new person. It's like, wow, I think I'm in love. But now you want to love this person for the rest of your life, or do you want to go back to something that you just know is not good for? And I like this new life, and I ain't trying to go back.
I love that, man. I love that response, and I also love the fact that it doesn't sound like you're any longer at war with yourself. And that's a beautiful way to kind of end our conversation. Kenneth, really quick before we go, let's tell everybody where they can find you and all the amazing work that you're doing these days.
Okay. 12facesofsober.com. 12 Faces of Sober. Just put the .com at the end. Website. You could also get merch. This is the first edition. I have new one now, camo. It's a lot more stuff that's on that website. You can see pictures of my journey. I haven't posted really anything on there recently, but there are pictures where you can kind of see the progression, and even in the past. You can follow me on pretty much all social media, 12 Faces of Sober, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Not really, even though that's the new wave, I don't really care too much for that. But Twitter, TikTok, but I don't really mess with Twitter either. Let me see what else. Oh yeah, and then
where can we purchase your book? Amazon?
Oh, it's on 12facessober.com as well. All you gotta do is click on order now, and then get it there, or you can get it on Amazon. Just type in 12 Faces of Sober, and it should be the first book that pops up.
Awesome. Kenneth, appreciate your time, brother.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Stacking Days Podcast. I appreciate you allowing me to come on and share my story. Sorry if I was long-winded, but sometimes it's different being on the other side of the spectrum in interviews. But so I don't get the chance to do it as much, but I appreciate it. And I do look forward to having you come on and share your story.
Absolutely.
And like I said, hear yours, and I could be able to pick your brain, and you be able to help somebody just as well as I'm able to help those that's watching this podcast.
Absolutely, man. I'm there for it. Let's get a time on the books. Thank you, man. I really do appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks, bro.
All right, brother. Thank you for listening to the Stacking Days podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, email me at rdg@stackingdays.com or follow us on Instagram at Stacking Days. If you like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, and by all means, share it with a friend who you think needs to be invited into the conversation. Until we meet again, be well, one day at a time.